Perfect. Then I guess we'll get started. So hello everyone, welcome back to the show. And today we have Mr. Jayden Hellyar and Mr. Tom Wilson, who are founders at the Game Creator, which is a video game newspaper in Australia, which is very interesting. So instead of me doing a presentation for Mr. Hellyar and Mr. Wilson, I guess it would be more appropriate for them to do their own introductions. Am I right?
Yeah, go for it. That sounds fun. You can start, Tom.
Oh, I can start. Thank you. Well, I am the editor-in-chief at the Game Creator. I do news, reviews, opinions, pretty much anything that needs doing. I joined back in, I think, November, end of November, December. And it's been a lot of fun ever since.
And Mr. Hellyar?
So I started the Game Creator back in June. And basically, it just started off as just me writing a blog because there was nowhere else to really write it. Like I started from nothing and didn't really know what I was going to do. I just wanted to write about games, pretty much that simple. And there wasn't really an opportunity for others to write. Like it wasn't really easy for me to just go out and write about games. So basically, I decided to start a blog that turned into a website, make the Game Creator, and that's where I am now. So
fantastic. And actually, I knew this from Bromo, which is one of your writers, which also came onto the show to talk about a very different topic. But just to make this clear, he said you're basically a millionaire who is looking to buy a second house when you're only 24 years old. Is that correct?
It's definitely not correct. but yeah, no, I just had my birthday the other day, so I'm technically 25. But no, I'm far from being a millionaire.
Okay. Well, first of all, a happy belated birthday to you, and
thank you.
Yeah, I know Bromo tend to exaggerate things a bit, so I'm glad that's out of the way. And for Mr. Wilson, Bromo also said that you got a master in journalism at the age of 22. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, but that's not that abnormal in the UK. Most people who go to uni do a master's pretty much straight afterwards.
Okay, yeah, I see. And what made you want to go into video game journalism instead of a more traditional journalism, for example, at the BBC or at any other big?
I mean, I love video games. It kind of made sense to do that. Yeah, I did when I did journalism at university. Basically, we did kind of the more traditional form of journalism, so like political journalism and kind of like local journalism. And as much as it's sort of interesting to talk to like my local council and that sort of thing, it basically just like wasn't that exciting to write. And then I was doing my own kind of film blog at the same time, which I really enjoyed doing. And then when I saw the opportunity to join the Game Creator, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because I love video games. I've talked about video games. So it kind of just worked out that way, really. It's just more exciting.
Okay, I see. And I guess, Mr. Hellyar, you already explained that you were interested in video games because you just like it and you just want a place to write, so you started a Game Creator.
Yeah, pretty much. I just love video games my whole life, really. So it just seemed, I just wanted to start writing about them. So I thought, just why not do it? Pretty much that.
That's great. All right, then. My question is for both of you, actually. What is it like to start out just like making a website that's also, I guess now it's monetized. So what's it start out like running almost a startup?
So it's rough. Obviously, it's going to be hard. You, at the moment, the Game Creator doesn't make a profit. But that's the reality of the situation. Unfortunately, I think everyone starting a business has to pay, to get somewhere, and that's just the way it is. So I do enjoy it, and that is what keeps it going. So it's definitely more of a passion thing rather than profit at the moment. But obviously one day hope to turn that around and become both.
That would be great. And Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I feel like it's you put in a lot of effort, you don't get much out. So if you don't enjoy doing it, it can be very kind of exhausting and very grueling. But I feel like, you're kind of working towards something, and with us, even over like the past couple of months, we've seen a good amount of growth. We've seen kind of contacts with people and kind of more interaction on like social media and stuff. And even though it's not getting paid, it's still kind of nice recognition, and you're getting people commenting on your articles and whatever. And that's kind of fun and exciting. So yeah, you put in a lot of effort to get not much out of it, but it's so long as you can muster the motivation and enjoy what you're doing, then yeah, I think it's difficult, it's rough, but it can be fun.
Yeah, it's little moments. The little moments just make it
Yeah,
worth
definitely.
it.
Yeah.
The little rewarding moments, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, since I guess you two are really based on your passion for video games, which I'm also passionate about. That's why I'm doing this interview in the first place. So my question would be, what aspects of this process that you enjoy the most, and what are some other aspects that you find the most difficult?
I think writing opinion pieces is probably the most enjoyable, because you basically just get to say whatever you want, and it's that's the most fun. I mean, obviously it involves a lot of research, but that's definitely enjoyable. And I think, getting codes from developers and being able to try out games kind of before they come out, that's really exciting too. I think probably the most difficult part of it, at least for me, kind of on the writing side, is kind of doing news and kind of having this constant battle with trying to do news that's relevant and kind of trying to stay at the top when you've got people like IGN and Eurogamer and all that kind of covering it like well in advance. That can be kind of self-defeating in a way. But I imagine from the kind of behind the scenes side of things, there's probably a bit more difficulty there. Hey, Jayden.
I think especially with the whole IGN Eurogamer thing. It's even if we cover it, I think that's the hardest part. Sometimes, even if we cover something, no matter what, if they cover it an hour late, they're going to always overtake us and everything like that. But that's just the reality of the situation. They've been going a lot longer, and that's just how it is. It's just that's how the algorithms work and everything like that. But I think, yeah, like Tom said, it is rewarding to, good to play games before they come out and all that stuff. It's nice to have. I think that was probably one of the most exciting things for me, especially when I first started doing it. Like when I got sent a game ahead of time before it came out, I was like, I don't know if you can swear on this, but I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's okay. I will try to edit it out.
Oh, it's okay. I'll try not to swear. Yeah, so I was just like, oh my God, this is awesome and stuff like that. So I got really excited. And yeah, that was definitely one of the most rewarding things. And it's, just little things like that, like I mentioned earlier, just make things all worth it, really.
Okay, I see. Yeah, I really see why you guys would enjoy doing this then. And before we move on to more journalism and industry type of questions, any advice for young people looking to go into business, and what advice can you give them?
Tough. It's always gonna be hard. It's always gonna be hard to start. I think, if you're passionate about something, definitely go and do it. But it's gonna be, I think a lot of people skip over, like when you see a lot of the, motivational things, a lot of people skip over, like if you've got a passion, go do it, this and that. But I think the biggest thing is you just got to not give up, really. I think at the end of the day, if you keep doing what you love and you keep pushing through, you just got to not give up. Because I think eventually, if you do something for long enough, it'll eventually just keep going. Especially with like YouTube, any of your social medias or anything, out a website. As long as you just keep going, I think it'll just work out. That's just how it is. You just got to not stop. Because I think if you stop, you're going to regret it, and it's, you're never going to not know where it could have been. And when you stop, it's all done. But if you keep going, I think you just got to push past it.
So it's like, if you stop, you're never going to know if you are going to make it or not. So you better just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if if you want something bad enough, you're always going to make it, and if you work hard enough, you're always going to get there. It's hard to speak now because we haven't really got to the point where it's made it profitable, but we have seen like a dramatic increase in the last 6 months, especially even since we started, because we only started around 10 months ago. And even in that short period of time, we've like grown dramatically in that time. And yeah, I think if anyone, is interested in pursuing a passion, I definitely recommend doing it.
I see. And I guess for Mr. Wilson, you have similar advice?
Yeah, you just got to have a good work ethic, Like, it can be difficult, especially when you see all these like bigger kind of companies doing it, and they have the resources and the staff and whatnot. But if you have good motivation and as Jayden said, like, just don't give up on it, because it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'm not going to do it today or whatever, or I'll leave it for a week or whatever. But I feel like if you really stick with it, you'll see changes, and it will be slow and it will be difficult at times, but I definitely think sticking with it will always pay off.
Okay, I see. And just a sub question to the advice question. So, how did you decide, especially Mr. Wilson, how did you decide between a more traditional career, for example, going into like the more expected type of journalism, rather than going to like a more bizarre sort of non-traditional video game journalism? So what made you to decide to go into a forging your own path versus a traditional career?
I feel like this one's kind of like simple. It's basically just you kind of get more freedom. There's more kind of like you do the kind of articles that you want to do. You cover the kind of games that you want to cover. Kind of doing the more traditional stuff. That stuff's like sponsored, so they'll get sent specific posts that they have to put up regardless of whether or not it's something that interests them. Whereas with us, we can be kind of more selective. We can see a game and go, well, maybe that doesn't fit with our kind of interests or whatever. And so we kind of have a bit more freedom in that. We can post articles. I've been on a bit of a tirade against Nintendo lately. We can post those kind of articles, have that kind of freedom, and I guess kind of cater more towards a niche, but in a way that like is what kind of meets our interests, which is just more freeing. And I think that's more interesting than doing kind of more mainstream stuff. In saying that, there's nothing wrong with doing mainstream stuff. I think mainstream stuff is super important, and I think you still get a lot of great articles out of the bigger kind of platforms. But I don't know. I think doing this kind of smaller, more niche stuff definitely more interesting and more freeing.
Okay, I see. And Mr. Hellyar?
That's you, Jayden.
Yeah,
you got
sorry.
anything else to add?
Yeah, it's okay.
I didn't really. Sorry, it just cut out when you were like when you spoke, so I didn't quite hear.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, no, I don't really have too much to add on that. I think, I just sort of lost it a bit when he mentioned his tirade against Nintendo. That's been a funny thing to witness lately. But I don't really have much to add. Tom pretty much summed it all up.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, then let's move on to more the journalism type of things. So what is the difference between a major news outlet covering video games and a small, let's say, indie outlet covering video games?
I think the difference really lies in the fact that they're always going to have it before us, which unfortunately is the hardest part about covering a lot of the major ones, like Tom touched on just before. When you're covering the AAA titles and stuff like that, the major news outlets, they got a lot of that information ahead of time. So that's what actually makes it quite hard for the small indie outlets covering games. But at the same time, I think a lot of the major news outlets, especially these days, without taking a dig at them a lot, but they're a lot more like they're going to say exactly what the news is, and that's sort of what it's turned into. Whereas if you get smaller indie outlets, at least some of them will at least give you an opinion, whether it be a strong opinion or a weak opinion or not. You're always going to get a little bit more rather than a basic sort of press release that, say, IGN or something that's going to have. It's just going to be flat with sort of no emotion, but they can pump it out because they're just so big. Whereas, yeah, if you get your indie one, it's just going to be people covering it purely on the fact they love the game at the end of the day. Because if you get IGN, they're sent these ones. They're normally in partnership or at least close with the other news outlets, and they're going to put it up just because they can. Whereas the indie outlet isn't going to be able to cover everything. So the games they cover are going to be ones they're passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like kind of touching on what you were saying, like we have quite a small writing team, especially in comparison to like IGN or whatever. Like I'll do a big portion of the news, and so you'll get a lot more kind of personality from our writing, say, than from something like IGN. Like you'll probably find a lot of like puns and alliteration in my news pieces. Whereas, as you say, in IGN, and I mean, we're picking on IGN a lot. There's nothing wrong with IGN, by the way, but they're just the biggest one, so it's kind of easier to kind of target them. But you'll often just get the kind of press release copy and pasted. It's been very interesting kind of working with press releases and stuff. I will try and like transform it into kind of a more interesting piece that's kind of easier to read or kind of doesn't use the same flowery language that they use, but like we'll do research or we'll kind of try and transform it into kind of more interesting kind of piece to read. Whereas, we get the same press releases as a lot of the big kind of companies get. And often it will be the exact same press release just on their website. So it's kind of interesting seeing that like they don't really put a lot of effort into transforming it because they don't need to. They're kind of doing the developers a favor, whereas for us, the developers doing us a favor. So it's kind of it's there's definitely more personality in kind of indie journalism, I think, than there is in mainstream journalism.
And I guess this personality present in indie outlets, it makes them more authentic. For example, I guess your personality or Bromore's personality or any of the writer's personality really makes the game creator very different from a major outlet where it's just almost apathetic way of covering video games.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you come and read a game creator article, you're bound to get something that's kind of probably a bit funny or a bit kind of even emotional, or you really get to sort of know the writers on a kind of even more personal level in some articles, or even just it's almost it's less like reading kind of like news and just like these kind of boring reviews where it's like, oh, there's this in the game and this in the game, this in the game, and it's more kind of like it's you kind of really get the perspective from the writer, and it kind of feels a bit more personal. And I don't know, in that sense, I feel like it's more enjoyable to read.
Yeah, we definitely do add a bit of like a few different things. Like especially even when we do our reviews, we try and cover the price in the game because I feel like a lot of the bigger companies and AAA companies, they don't cover the price, nor that it'll ever matter to them because most like pretty close to every game they review and everything like that will be free or provided for, whereas we don't get sent every single game that we review. Some of the games, like the big AAA games, we don't get sent them, but we just want to review them anyway. We want to play them, we want to do that, but we also have to consider other people like us. Like most gamers, like they have to buy their games. Like, it's expensive to go out and buy, well, I'm talking in Australian prices here, but for example, PS5 games in Australia, like if they're PS5 exclusive, they're $125.
Oh, that's even more than here. I mean, I don't know the conversion rate, but here it's I think $80 or $90 for the new PS5.
Yeah, I think Canada and Australia's are at 1-to-1. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty close. I went to Canada like 2 years ago. That's a tangent in itself. But when I went, it was around 1-to-1. So yeah, so 125 for like a PS5 game here. So if you consider that, especially when you're reviewing a game and you're saying it's not very good, I think it's only fair to say, one, I wouldn't pay that much money, and like, two, there's not enough content sort of thing in the game to support how much that would cost. So
yeah, I see. Okay. I definitely want to watch video game content. I always prefer to. Actually, I really watch IGN because they almost the way they cover games almost automatic. They have like this grading scheme, and it's more like the journalist is made to cover the game instead of they want to cover the game. So like that, I think that really differentiates what you guys do at the Game Creator versus IGN. I mean, we're talking about IGN, but it's really the major video game outlet.
Yeah, definitely. No need to target IGN, but yeah, they are just the biggest. It's just easy to target them. And...
Yeah.
Well, my second question, I guess, what makes video game journalism different from other types of news journalism? And actually, to make it more specific, so how does a major news outlet, game outlet, transform a almost a passionate project, which is what you guys do, into a more corporate, more controlled, almost like a more mainstream type of outlet? So what is really the difference between video game journalism in general and indie video game journalism and mainstream video game journalism?
I'd say mostly a lot of that goes down to time as well. Like because we're using IGN as an example, they started in the 90s. So the fact that they've been going for so long, and they started basically, I think they started with magazines originally and stuff like that. So they've gone on through basically the growth of the internet. So they've always sort of been there, reviewing games, getting all that done, smashing out all of that. And we've only just started in the last year. So I think a lot of indie games, video game journalism sites and, corporations and publications and whatnot, it's just the difference, I think, is time. But I think a lot of them have turned into, like you said, more of a corporate setting. And I think that's just what happens to all of them over time. As long as they go in that direction, it'll just link back to whether it's a passion or profit project.
Yeah, I think two big differences that you'll find is kind of sponsored posts or, kind of generating income and stuff like that on kind of mainstream stuff. You're going to get a lot more of that because it's like, I feel like the best way of kind of making money. But also with mainstream video game journalism, especially, if they get sent a key or a code by a developer and they don't like the game and they criticize the game, they don't need to worry about the next code because they're going to get it anyway because they're the big one. Whereas for us, a big concern is if we don't like a game and we criticize a game, we kind of cut off an avenue of developers, that we are in contact with because we said their game wasn't very good. So there's definitely a kind of like when you're just starting out, a balancing of being like, oh, so and so has sent us a code. Do we want to kind of maintain that relationship in the future, or do we want to kind of be honest and sort of say whatever we want? And I feel like there's definitely, for an indie journalism outlet, it's definitely kind of towing a fine line between being honest and maintaining relationships, and that's very difficult. Whereas if you're a big kind of mainstream media one, you don't need to worry about that at all.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point behind the scenes when we have to. It's just really interesting when we have to sort out, like, if we're gonna rate a game low, how we're gonna go about it with the developer. So there's a few instances where we haven't got responses and whatnot, but it just is what it is, really. So
I mean, like on my perspective, I can't really blame you guys because you guys are trying to make it. But I guess this also makes your journalism more interesting in a way because the again IGN, but by IGN we really mean the big video game outlets. I hope like IGN don't try to take this episode down or anything. So I guess they are really just more focused on saying whatever they like, but even so they say whatever they like, but they are saying what they like, but they are saying it away because they are paid to say it. So the journalist is paid to say it. So I guess that makes your journalism more interesting because you have to almost shape it in a way with your personality to make sure that it's interesting and not just paid to say whatever you're paid to say, right?
I think it goes twice because sometimes I reckon they're paid to say things, and also at the same time, I think there's situations where they also can say whatever they want because they know there'll be no consequences.
Yeah.
So I think there is situations where they're going to cover every game under the sun, because they can and because their staff allows it. But not every single person's going to like that game. They're probably like some guys going to get shafted. I think of that like shafted a game and they're not really interested in. That actually happened this year with GameSpot, with Cyberpunk. So there was a girl who reviewed that and she got a lot of hate on the whole article and it turned a bit sour. But it's basically like she's more into Animal Crossing and more like chilled, relaxing games. And she got put on the project of Cyberpunk 2077 and basically had to tell the world, she had to tell the world that the game was basically bad before it came out, and she got a lot of hate for that.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype around that game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Then I guess we can move on to the corporate dynamics in video games, which is a very fun topic and a very influential one, especially in the modern video game models that they are pushing out. So first, just a general question, where do you see this corporate dynamic in video games, and how does this influence the game they produce, for companies produce? For example, in 2018, I think was with EA's Star Wars Battlefront 2, which they put loot boxes in an $60 American video game, which a lot of people actually boycotted that game because they had loot boxes. So how does corporate interest influence video games they produce, and how this influence the way their games are covered?
I feel like obviously one thing that maybe a lot of people forget is that video game developers are like businesses and they're trying to make as much money as they can. You do get a lot of stuff like EA, who are kind of notorious for making as much money from a video game as possible, kind of putting loot boxes in stuff. There was the scandal, I think it was last year, where in the UFA game, they put like adverts like mid-game or whatever that you had to watch when you were fighting or whatever. It is kind of, they're a business, they're trying to make money, it's understandable, but it can interfere with a video game, with players' enjoyment, and as a result is obviously criticized quite harshly. And I think a lot of that stuff is getting phased out. Loot boxes are kind of becoming more transparent. Companies have to put kind of your chances of winning various items because it's essentially gambling, and a lot of kind of countries are cracking down on that kind of side of it. I think a trend that we are seeing more and more often, kind of going back to Cyberpunk, is releasing games that are not finished and charging full price and then kind of fixing it afterwards. And I think it's something we're seeing more of because gaming is becoming kind of more mainstream. It's kind of like all over the internet. And I feel like there are a lot of kind of people that are demanding video games. I know a lot of people blamed Cyberpunk's kind of being rushed out on the fans kind of demanding it and kind of sending death threats and whatnot. But you've also got kind of investors and stuff who want to see a return on their money. And Cyberpunk was taking like 8 years or whatever. And they were like, well, we kind of want we kind of want to see some money from that game. So I think, it's difficult to say because on the one hand, yeah, it sucks for video games. It sucks for players that these games are being rushed out. But on the other, these are businesses. They're trying to make as much money as possible. So it's difficult to kind of judge in that respect. But I do think, like in any media, in film, in I'm sure in like comics, in video games, when corporate interferes with creativity, it can cause a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a kind of a distance between the two, and that's not that enjoyable for players.
Yeah,
I'd argue.
I see.
I hope I answered your question. I don't know. I kind of rambled.
No, it makes it clear. Yeah, Mr. Hellyar.
Yeah, I think Tom pretty much summed it up. He went on a bit of a tangent there, so
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much
It's
everything. But I think that's to basically tie it in. That's basically the difference between AAA games and indie games. Like, you always have to. There's always, when you have a big AAA game, there's always that publisher behind. And just relating it back to Cyberpunk as well, you've got like a team of, I think 500, I think CD Projekt Red had for the whole company sort of thing. And so you've got like a marketing team. And I think a lot of people complained, like, why were they still pushing the game and advertising and doing the Night City wires and all that each week if they knew the game wasn't ready or it wasn't good. It's because they've got the marketing team, pushing the marketing side of things. They've got them pushing that weekly Night City wire that's already organized each week, and they're focusing on all of that. The devs are over in another section. They're going like, oh no, this game is going to be horrible. We haven't got it finished yet. But the publishers and all the stockholders and all the people that, are going to make a fortune off this getting released and like it coming out, they're all going, we need this now. We need the money. It's been in development for so long. Like, I still remember seeing the first trailer from 2012, I think, or early 2013.
Was it that long ago? Oh my God.
Yeah, I think it was 2013, around January or something.
Yeah.
They released a teaser for it saying it's coming soon. So at that point, I can understand the position of the publishers and the stockholders going like, come on, let's just get this done. And I don't think, obviously, COVID plays a factor. Wouldn't have been a big deal, but at the same time, that's the difference between your big AAA studios and indie games. Whereas indie games, it's going to be more a passion project. They're going to want to release the game. It's everything they want, and they want it to be good. They will only really make money if it's successful or it blows up like another Undertale or something like that. It's never, they don't have a publisher involved. They don't have someone pushing them over the edge to get it ready. And it sort of relates back to the same with us as well, being more of an indie like company as well. There's no one pushing us to release things. We don't have sponsored posts or ads on our website or anything like that. So we just want to try and give the best, like the best you can see on the website, really. Like and it's the same with them. They just want the best game possible. So
I think if you put it this way, this really differentiates Witcher 3, which is the previous game not the previous, the previous before the Witcher Storytale series. Like, that really different Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077, because if you look at Witcher 3 in a way, it's almost like an indie game. They made it because they enjoyed making it, and they stopped making the series because they said they had enough of with this franchise for the time being. So I guess that really differentiates Witcher 3, which is a game that a lot of people loved, and Cyberpunk 2077, which they had to recall, if I'm not mistaken, from PlayStation and Xbox.
Yeah, so just from PlayStation, I think it stayed on Xbox.
Yeah, it's still on Xbox. Yeah. It's only on PlayStation 4 that you can't buy it.
Yeah,
but I think
you can't get it on PS5.
Okay, fair. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that when The Witcher came out, that was super buggy as well, and they had to patch that. But I think the big difference between The Witcher 3 when that launched and Cyberpunk is The Witcher 3 was pretty much done. Like, the systems were there. The gameplay was solid, the story was solid, whereas with Cyberpunk, that was like a half-finished game. And I think you're right in that The Witcher 3 was definitely a kind of a passion project. I mean, CD Projekt Red kind of developed itself almost in the same way as Pixar did originally, which was kind of, they're sick of kind of corporate intervention and sick of publishers telling them what to do. And so they went down the self-publishing route. They went down we want to make whatever game we want to make. And I think there is parts of Cyberpunk that's evident of that, because it's this crazy kind of huge world, and there's a lot of really great ideas there. So I think there's still some of CD Projekt Red in it, but I think there's definitely player expectation, investor expectation, and maybe just too much hype. It's kind of the No Man's Sky problem of maybe don't call it the next generation of open world gaming if it's not going to involve features that were there kind of in games 7 years ago.
Yeah, okay, I see. I think you also see this with Bethesda, also see this with BioWare, with like Mass Effects, like the Andromeda was a disaster, but like, so I guess it's also, it's a sort of like the major game publisher or the not game publisher or the game developers, they are influenced by the players' expectation, especially also sometimes by the hype they create on their own and also by the corporate interest behind them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in BioWare's case, they're kind of run by EA. So the reason why Andromeda was such a flop, if I remember correctly, is because EA wanted them desperately to make it in their Frostbite engine. The Frostbite engine was just not ready for a game like Mass Effect Andromeda. They spent like 2 years of development trying to make it work. It wouldn't. They then had to like restart development and basically do the whole thing again. So that was like a massive kind of undertaking for them to do in such a short space of time. And even recently, with the success of Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order as a single player game, EA thought it was a massive risk releasing a single player only game. It was super successful. And as a result, EA allowed BioWare to make the new Dragon Age game and the new Mass Effect game single player experiences and not games as a live service, which they were originally going to be. So it is this kind of massive corporate intervention. And then I think I think we are slowly getting to a point where corporate entities like EA and big publishers and that are kind of reeling back a bit and being like, okay, well, actually, the players have spoken. They like single player games. So we're going to let BioWare do their own thing. I think we are getting more of that, but it is taking time. It is kind of, the control is slowly getting back to the developers, but I think it's taking time to kind of get to that stage.
Okay, I see. And let's also talk a bit more about like the multiplayer game and single player game dynamics between in corporate settings. Because it's really interesting. Before they were, I think, especially Ubisoft, they are pushing a model of almost live subscription, but not really live subscription. It's more like an ongoing process. For example, with Rainbow Six Siege or even with Ghost Recon games, which was I believe it was supposed to be in the history of Ghost Recon game was supposed to be single player only, and then they developed it more into like a ongoing live experience where there's like expansion packs every couple like cycles, I guess. So why are corporate moving more towards this direction, and why are some others moving into like a more single player direction?
Yeah, I've been playing a lot of those sorts of games recently. I've been playing a lot of Warzone and like Fortnite, and a lot of those, and even like Genshin Impact is actually a similar one as well. They're going towards that games as a live service sort of deal. And I think the biggest reason why they're going that direction and why they can and why they are so successful is because it starts off like Rainbow Six Siege and all that are a little different because you have to pay for the initial game itself and then you get those expansions and you keep going. Whereas Genshin Impact, I think it hit huge success, and so did Fortnite and Warzone because they're free. It's just simple. Anyone can jump on and they can play for free. And I think that opens the market up to so many people that otherwise couldn't afford a game or a game of like previous to that, like I'm not sure if like everyone could afford a Call of Duty game because they're always top price and stuff like that. And if you're not fully invested in the game or not sure on the idea, you're like, oh, okay, well I'll never go buy a Call of Duty game. I could like it, but I'm never going to go try it. But now that Warzone's free, it opens the door to all these people that never quite knew if they were going to like it or not. And now they've probably liked it, and they've probably gone and bought, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, their newest one, which I think is one of the top sold games of the year or something like that. I think it is number one in the last year. And I think a lot of people went out and, played Warzone because it was free and then go, okay, yeah, I'll play the next COD that comes out because, now I'm interested in it. And I think Genshin Impact was a similar success. And the reason why they still make a lot of money is because of that games as a live service. You pay mostly, I think those ones in particular, those three, you pay generally for cosmetic effects. Genshin Impact's a little bit different, and that one's actually a bit more of an anomaly, which has actually been crazy successful. Doing the gacha thing on different actual characters itself is, I think personally a bit of a risky business decision, but it's worked out. Like I know Call of Duty tried it in the past and it failed, and I know a few other games have tried to do it, like even Star Wars Battlefront 2, how we were saying it tried to do all the behind the loot boxes and it failed dramatically. So I think Genshin Impact has done, a really good job of making it accessible to play and also introducing a like monetary aspect where they can make realistically just a fortune.
Yeah.
They've made a lot of money.
I think to add to that as well, like in terms of kind of transitioning single player titles to these kind of as a live service type games, kind of touching on what you were saying, Jayden, in that games are super expensive these days. And I think, if somebody's going to pay like whatever, $125 or whatever you're saying for a game, they want to be able to feel like, oh, well, this is a game that I can play for a really, really long time. And so doing games as a live service where like new quests are added every day or, like new like achievements to unlock are added or whatever. There's these kind of like constantly updated games that kind of generates this almost unlimited amount of content for you to do to basically keep you occupied until, the next big release. And I think in that sense, it's actually quite a good thing because it's, kind of making these games worth the obscene amount of money that you're paying. But on the other hand, it does kind of create these less focused games, these less focused titles, because they know, oh, well, we don't have to focus too much on kind of creating an interesting story or whatever, because we can just make it as a live service game and just release content every so often. So I think, as Jayden was saying, microtransactions are a big part of games as a live service. For example, with the Assassin's Creed games, you can pay for like XP boosters. So if you keep generating more and more missions for people to do, people have to grind and grind and grind. And eventually they're going to go, oh, well, I'll just pay for an XP booster and that'll make the grind a lot easier. And so there is like a lot of money in microtransactions, which kind of makes this games as a live service kind of more profitable. So it's kind of, there's arguments for it and I think for against it even, but it's certainly an interesting development in especially in terms of single player games.
I see. And talking about microtransaction especially, then let's move on to the topic of mobile gaming, which is getting pretty big recently, especially with the whole Diablo thing, and also I think also Nintendo, which also starts to develop a lot more mobile games. So for example, we see Fire Emblem Heroes, I think that came to the West in 2018, and Animal Crossing on the iOS and also Android, I believe. So what is the corporate interest behind the rise of mobile gaming?
Money.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots and lots of money to be had in mobile gaming.
It's essentially the same. The games of a service stuff is basically just come from mobile gaming. It's pretty much that simple. Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes loads of money. Games like Pocket Camp, and which is the Animal Crossing one, and Fire Emblem Heroes, people are paying for that like gacha stuff or to speed up the like production of their camp or whatever. It's just a massive way to make a really, really easy to make game. They probably make it for not very much money and then generate a lot of money as a result from people paying for microtransactions. So I think the appeal there is 100% money.
Yeah, I think the mobile gaming sort of arena, I think that is probably one of the only places where you can, not that it, like when you make a Steam game or a game on PC, AAA games generally are going to be, well, should be at least with the amount of money in them, should be ahead of indie games when you look at it on paper. Whereas I think mobile gaming is a platform where you can be an indie dev and you can actually make a game that can earn you a lot of money and compare with those bigger AAA games, on mobile. And that's generally what mobile gaming, I feel, was always prior to the last few years, mostly indie games. Like it was never really big AAA studios going on there. And I think, that's that Diablo debacle. What you're saying is, Diablo's seen how much money mobile games are making, and they're like, well, we've already made the name Diablo. Everyone knows what Diablo is. If we just chuck it on the mobile store for free with some microtransactions, everyone is gonna, everyone that's played Diablo is gonna jump on there and be, oh, it's free, it's pay on my phone, I can play anywhere and keep going. And they're going to attract a whole new audience that plays mobile games. They're going to attract the audience that they had on console, all come there, and they're trying to make like a bigger audience. I think a lot of AAA developers are starting to try and do that, like what Tom was saying with like Animal Crossing and how you said it as well, Animal Crossing Pocket Camp and a few of those other ones where you have to wait time to do things. Like there's like an energy incorporated, and you run out of your energy, you're done for the day. Where some people generally, aren't done for the day, and they want to keep going, so they're going to pay real money to keep playing. And I think if a lot of AAA games that already have established big titles, they can easily come to mobile gaming and bring an audience with them.
Okay, I see. And regarding like the indie games on mobile platform, do you see this as a democratization of gaming, or do you see this more like as a deterioration in the quality of games? Because if I go on the iOS stores, I want to play a game, I almost always I don't see anything interesting for me personally to play. So my question would be, would this be a democratization of gaming, or would this more be like just a deterioration and just mediocre games being pushed on the mobile platform, which is also a stigma that mobile platform has?
I think there's definitely a lot of bad games being pushed onto mobile. I think that's definitely a big part of it. I think, one of the reasons was, back in the day when kind of mobile was first starting out, and you were getting kind of games like Candy Crush and stuff like that. It was new and it was fresh, and it was kind of this, oh my God, like you can play these like super simple but like super addictive games on your phone. And over the years, it's just become kind of filled with just clones, and basically games that just recycle the same ideas. You've got Toon Blast and Toy World and Juice Jam and Candy Crush, and they all do the exact same thing. They're all the same game. And I feel like it has gotten to this point where, as Jayden was saying, you can be an indie developer and you can release really interesting games onto the mobile platform. And I think a lot of indie games have seen success there. But you do have a platform. Everyone has a phone, and so developers all over the world are like, I want to make a game for mobile because it's the biggest audience. And so I think there's definitely a lot of like, well, I can make whatever cheap game and just put it out there. So even though there might be interesting games out there that may even see a lot of success, I think the biggest problem with the mobile store and the kind of mobile gaming world is just a lot of really, really terrible games being pumped out all the time. And I think this is a problem that is also affecting the Switch, because the Switch has basically just become a place to port bad mobile games to.
Yes.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there used to be a time, I think would have been probably almost 10 years ago, when I first had, like an iPod Touch, if anyone remembers what they are. Yeah, I remember I had like an iPhone Touch, and like this is when I'd go, like Wi-Fi wasn't that big in Australia, so it's like, it's not that bad. So it would have been like 10, 15 years ago probably, and I was quite young. Wi-Fi wasn't like a crazy thing here, but we like sort of just got Wi-Fi, and I would be downloading games. So if I went on a road trip or something with my family, I could play games on my phone. And back then, free games were like few and far between. Like there was basically like no free games. You always had to pay, I think it was like $1.69 or something for games, like for the cheapest you could buy on the App Store. And I remember I could play some genuinely good games, and a lot of those games have been phased out now on the App Store, or they've just been discontinued because like they're just completely dead now. Because a lot of those games have just been recreated with ads and free on the new store. So like a lot of them just use ads to push game, really. Like the top, I agree with you, Henry, in saying the top games are just bad. Like I looked through the top 10, like because I don't mind mobile gaming. Like I don't think I play a lot of the more shooter ones. Like I'll never play like PUBG or anything on my phone. I like more just easygoing game that I can just relax on my phone with before bed. And I do occasionally check, the App Store, and I look through probably about the top 30 to 40 games, and I can never see a single thing that I'm interested in. I just sort of sit there scrolling aimlessly, just looking through crap.
Yeah. Well, I think the paying of video games, as you mentioned, Jayden, that in the previous decade, I think like even in my childhood was like that. I think back then my father had like the first iPad, which we still have in his office. Like there was a lot of good games on there. I'm not going to lie. Like I probably also started off gaming like on the mobile platform, but yeah, I think as you said, with when gaming and the Wi-Fi and internet became more and more popular and widespread, they just became flooded, and also sort of like the corporate also realized there's another way to monetize their game to make it more profitable. And speaking of appropriating games or revamping games and putting them on other platforms, I sort of want to touch a bit more on like the remaster side of things. I want to bring the example of Dark Souls, actually, Dark Souls Remastered. Because a lot of Dark Souls fans, including myself, was not very happy with that remaster. So, what are the corporate interests behind remaster, and what can be considered as a real remaster versus like Dark Souls remastered?
Yeah, remasters is a touchy subject. I've written quite a few articles on my feelings about remasters. I feel like again, I think with all corporate things, the great thing about a remaster is it's very cheap to do and will generate a lot of money. I mean, even if you take a look at, for example, the recently announced Skyward Sword remaster for the Nintendo Switch, which is a game that was made in 2011. It is being sold separately, not in a bundle, and they're charging £49.99. I'm not sure what the equivalent is. For this, 10-year-old remaster. I think remasters can generate a lot of money. They're very easy to make. You don't have to, really do that much to it other than kind of port over to the new system and maybe kind of tweak the controls a bit. I feel like a lot of people can be disappointed in a remaster because in a lot of cases, for example, I remember when Far Cry 3 was remastered and brought over to kind of, at the time, next-gen platforms, so PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. A lot of people kind of came to the realization that maybe Far Cry 3, as great of a game as it is, it's kind of marred by the kind of, the limitations of the time when it was made, because it was made on the Xbox 360, and it was made in a time where, people hadn't come up with all the great kind of game innovations that we have now. So when people were playing the Far Cry 3 remaster, they were like, oh, it's not as good as I remember it being.
Yeah.
And I feel like this can be an issue with remasters because there is this kind of rose-tinted nostalgia, and there is this kind of, you played it as a kid and then it gets brought back, and maybe it's not as good as you're hoping. I think a good remaster is, a good remaster is taking a game that maybe not a lot of people have experienced, or even if lots of people have experienced it, they experienced it a long time ago, bringing it and updating it in a way that kind of adheres to like modern game design and stuff like that. I feel like you can't just take an old game, bring it over and sell it again, because it will have that old school game design. For example, I'm a big Xenoblade Chronicles fan, but when they released the remaster or the remake of the first Xenoblade Chronicles, I absolutely hated it because it is so kind of riddled with game design problems because it was made, in the Wii era. And I feel like you need to modernize it, and you need to bring it to a point where it can compete with the games of this generation, which I think is a lot more hard work. It's doable, but it's definitely a lot more hard work. For example, we were talking on our podcast, the Creator Corner. We were talking about the new Pokemon remakes, the Diamond and Pearl remakes, and we were kind of saying how
they made no effort to, for example, even update it to have the same visual style as the current games. It doesn't necessarily need to be open world, or at least have open areas like the new games, but it's not even the same style. So it's kind of just the same game, but with a kind of slightly updated, kind of chibi visual style. I feel like if you put in the effort to kind of modernize it, to bring it to modern day standards, and to kind of get rid of the issues that were plaguing it, then remakes and remasters can absolutely work. A good example of that is the Shadow of Colossus remake, which a lot of people really, really like. And even the Demon's Souls remake, which was made by the same people, Blue Point, I believe they're called, where they took the old game, they went, what was wrong with that game? What made it bad? And then they updated it to kind of make it more fun and more enjoyable for audiences now. So yeah, I feel like for me, a remake or a remaster needs to evolve with the times and kind of modernize it in order to be good. And I feel like a lot of the time, Nintendo especially, they don't do that. And as a result, they overcharge for what is essentially the same game that you played 10 years ago.
Like the Mario All-Stars package.
Exactly. Which, side note, was ridiculous that they pulled after March 31st, and was a very scummy business tactic by Nintendo. But anyway, that's besides the point.
I think Nintendo has like the nostalgia capital to pull those remasters.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. I think the biggest problem with Nintendo at the moment is they have the nostalgia and everyone's going to buy it, and they know that.
100%.
If you bring back like the what we were just saying about the 3D Mario All-Stars package of 3 games, they were just straight ports. They didn't even touch them at all. They literally just bundled 3 games together, sold it as one, and I feel like it's like the games from a Super Mario 64 is. I'm definitely not going to bag that game. That was easily one of my favorite games, and it's the game I grew up on as a child. But to resell it with 2 other Mario games and then take it off the shelf, put a deadline on it, I think it's a bit
that's
it's scummy. Just because they're going to tell everyone buy it before this date, or you're never going to buy it again. So it's kind of like, well, everyone went out and bought it, didn't they?
I mean, if
Absolutely.
they put an effort into that, into remaking, I guess that could be justifiable to play on people's nostalgia, but if they just port the game, Mr. Wilson, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's also the difference between being in a store, or even going on Amazon or whatever, and picking between a newly released game like the new Spider-Man game, or for example the new Far Cry game that's coming out or whatever, and then that's the same price as this package of remastered Nintendo games. Deciding between a new game and a game that you've already played many, many times before as a kid, for me, it doesn't make sense that they're the same price. For me, the remaster should be significantly cheaper than a brand new game that is, has a new story that you've literally never played before. It doesn't make sense that the cost is the same. For example, when they re-released the Devil May Cry games on the Nintendo Switch, they released them in the UK for £15.99, which for some might seem unreasonably high because they're quite old games, but at least that's significantly cheaper than the cost of Breath of the Wild. But what they're essentially saying here is that Skyward Sword, a game made 10 years ago, is worth the same amount of money as Breath of the Wild at full price, which is unbelievable. Or that the Mario Collection, All-Star Collection, is worth the same as Mario Odyssey. It's not in any shape or form. So for me, that's quite annoying, and it's just a shame because it's lazy. You're kind of cheating people out of money. You're just reselling them games that they've played. I mean, I'm sure, Jayden, you've probably played Mario 64 like a million times. I know I've played it a million times. I've played it, on the DS, and I'm sure it's on like every Nintendo platform at this point. I've played it like so many times. I don't need to play it again just because it's on the Switch. It doesn't make sense.
The problem is I did play it again.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
it
I
worked.
mean, yeah. Well, this is it. It does work because, I remember one night I was super, super bored and I wanted a game to play. And I saw that Skyrim was on the Switch. And I love Skyrim, or at least I loved Skyrim when I played it on the 360. And so I bought it at full price, which was £60, right? Which is far too much for Skyrim, which is like £5 on the Xbox 360. And I immediately regretted my purchase because I was like, this is just Skyrim, but it's on the Switch, and I just paid a ridiculous amount of money for it. I think that's the issue. There's a lot more, for me, buyer's remorse with these kind of remaster games that are sold at ridiculously high prices because it's just the same game. And that quickly dawns on you when you start playing it.
Yeah, okay, I see. That definitely makes sense. That's sort of like my feeling when seeing like Dark Souls Remaster and like seeing Demon Souls Remaster, which is just completely different things. I mean, yeah, I think that covers it pretty well. And speaking of like porting games, let's talk about yearly releases, especially for example Call of Duty. Some people just say they are not just Call of Duty, but like those type of games are just like the same game, but you just put a different type of skin on it, and then they just resell it for another price. So do you think, do you, for example, Mr. Wilson, do you also feel buyer's remorse when you buy those types of game, because you know that next year they're just going to have another game which is pretty much the same game, but if you want to keep playing, you have to buy that game instead?
Me and my brother, we played FIFA 13 up until last year when we bought FIFA 18 for 50p. For us, FIFA is the same game every single year. The gameplay is slightly tweaked, the visuals are slightly tweaked, and of course it updates the team roster, but it's essentially the same game every year. And in that instance, I think it is ridiculous to charge the same price for essentially the same game. I mean, for example, during 2020, when there was COVID and developers were kind of rushing to kind of get these yearly releases out, PES, instead of releasing a new game, released a £20 or £30 kind of upgrade pack for PES 2020, which essentially just updated the team rosters and changed the gameplay a little bit. That was kind of damning in basically going, oh, so it is really the same game every year, you're just charging full price for it. In terms of Call of Duty, I think that's a different beast because, and I think the same can be applied for Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and all those which are released, maybe not yearly, but I think every 2 years or so. With Call of Duty games, you are getting a different game every time. There's a new story, a new setting. The graphics are usually like massively upgraded. And I feel like these are games that a misconception is that these games are developed in a year and then released. And I think maybe in the case of FIFA, that actually might be the case. I think maybe they are developed in a year. Yeah, but with Call of Duty, these are games that are developed over many years, just by different teams, and they kind of alternate and they release them yearly. Call of Duty, I think, whatever you may think of Call of Duty, they definitely try every year to do something a little bit different. Take, for example, the Call of Duty World War II, which kind of massively changed up the formula in terms of the like fundamental gameplay, and obviously brought the game to a familiar setting because we'd had World War II games a while back, but was kind of brand new for the franchise because we hadn't had one in a while. I think, and it's the same with Assassin's Creed. The jump from, I think it's Black Flag to Origins. That was a whole new combat system, a whole new kind of way of playing Assassin's Creed. And with each game, they are kind of adding kind of new things and new tweaks to the way that they tell the story and the gameplay. So I think in the case of something like FIFA, yeah, I would have massive buyer's remorse if I bought FIFA 2022 because it's going to be as good as FIFA 13. In fact, it's probably going to be worse because FIFA 13 is the best FIFA. But in terms of something like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed or whatever, I don't think there is, because I think they are different games. I think they warrant being bought every year. Yeah, that's my kind of piece on that.
Yeah, I agree. I was pretty much going to say that PES thing, and then you pretty much just took it straight out of my mouth. So, the Call of Duty thing. Yeah, I think. Yeah, each year there's they're out every single year, and I think basically what Tom said. Like, I think FIFA is done pretty much in a year, whereas Call of Duty, yeah, there's different teams that head it every year, and they do work on them for a few years. Like I think the one rumor this year is supposed to be going back to that World War II sort of setting, and that's headed by Sledgehammer Games. And the latest one, Call of Duty Cold War, was by I think Raven Software or Treyarch, and then the one before that's Raven Software, and then they alternate between. I think there's 3 or 4 different developers. Like I think there's Treyarch, Raven, Sledgehammer, and Infinity Ward. They all just rotate between each other and all make games. So they're actually working on it for a few years beforehand. And to make matters worse, they even use different engines. So that's there's like a lot of talk about the Warzone engine being good, and then some people hate it, and then some people like the Call of Duty Cold War engine, but then other people hate it. So it's, I think each one is a different entity in itself, and it can get confusing. I think it just depends what you like and what you're into. So, yeah, but touching on the FIFA thing, I think FIFA is a bit ridiculous. I think it's the same game every year.
Yeah. I think the sports games sort of have the same nostalgia capital. I mean, not nostalgia capital, but like the culture capital to do the same thing every year, because there will always be sports fans to buy those games.
Yeah, I definitely fell into the FIFA train there for a bit. I think I bought every FIFA from, what do you mean, like 2008, basically to 2020, I think, to FIFA 2020. Yeah, so I definitely, well, it was not just like I didn't even play a lot of them for a long period of time. It was just like, oh, FIFA's out, I'll buy it. I've already got my pre-order ready. I'll just go down and get it. It's just FIFA. So
I think that's another big thing as well, is there's kind of maybe not that much excitement around them. You kind of can't really get excited for the next FIFA because you're just like, oh yeah, it's FIFA. Do you know what I mean?
I get a little excited for the updated squads, but then that gets done. Once you play like for a week, you're like, oh, cool.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, because FIFA, it's always been FIFA since FIFA began, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
always,
yeah.
Always be the same thing.
Yeah. And speaking of yearly releases, then also releases, but more on a different light, can we talk a bit more like exclusive, especially before it was exclusive on console, there was always exclusive on the PS4, on the Xbox, on Nintendo, they're also exclusive. But now, exclusives also starting to appear on PC, especially with Epic Games. So, what are the dynamics of exclusive behind video games, and why would a publisher or a developer put their game exclusively on one platform but not on other platforms?
That's generally to do with how much the platform is offering them to put their game exclusively. I think, you get the recent deal with Bethesda and Microsoft, where Microsoft bought Bethesda for an incredible amount of money.
I think it was 7.5 or something like that.
7.5 billion, wasn't it?
Yeah, around about
that. Yeah. It was a ridiculous amount of money. And exclusives are everything now, because you have kind of these console wars. And I think, in the last generation and the generation before that, you had, there was hardware comparisons where whichever console had the better hardware, that was the one to get. But now we're kind of in a point where, at least in the console generation, they're pretty much the same. And it's now not a question of, oh, well, the Xbox is faster or the Xbox can run better games or whatever. It's now just, oh, well, PlayStation has Horizon Zero Dawn and Xbox has Halo. And, it is this kind of like, you buy a platform not because it's the better console, but because it has the game that you like. And with PC, it's kind of becoming the same thing where, Steam is so kind of everywhere. Like everyone who has PC, who plays games, has Steam. You kind of can't not have Steam. So to beat Steam, the only thing you can do is go, well, we have a game that they don't. So come to our platform and play it. And I think for Epic, who have infinite money, it would seem, because they just spend money on just whatever they want. For them, it's easy to go, oh, well, we'll buy this company for 15 million, or we'll buy the rights to have this game on our platform for a year for like 2 million or whatever. And the company, of course, are going to go, oh, well, yeah, absolutely. We want that because you're going to give us a whole load of money. And I think that's where it is. I think that's, where it stands, that if you want people to come to your platform, you have to have exclusive games. You have to be able to go, we have something that they don't. Because you can't say we have the faster console because they're all the same now. But you can say we have Horizon Zero Dawn and you don't. Or we have Halo Infinite and you don't. And I think that's where it is at this point. I think that's how you win a console war. And I think, in the last generation, PlayStation sold way better than Xbox. And that's no slight against Xbox, but, PlayStation had more exclusives. It had more games where they could say, we have this and you don't. And Xbox was kind of trailing behind. And I think they're trying to catch up now. Buying Bethesda is a huge move for them to go, well, we now have The Elder Scrolls as an exclusive, or we now have Starfield as an exclusive, or whatever. We have Doom as an exclusive. That's going to be a huge step for them. That's why they spent $7.5 billion, because they can now go, well, come to our platform because we have this game. I think that's the importance of exclusives.
Okay, coming to Xbox buying Bethesda, I don't remember correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong. Did they say that they are going to make a Bethesda game exclusive on Xbox, or did they say that they will just delay or some release to other platforms?
I don't think they've said any exclusivity on all of that yet. I think it's just sort of TBA. A few of the Bethesda games already had contracts with PlayStation, so they're going to uphold those. But I think, fortunately, Microsoft, because they sort of also are a big computer brand, you're always going to find... there's never going to be a true Xbox exclusive anymore, like how you get PlayStation exclusives only on the console. Even then, a lot of PlayStation games are now coming to Steam and onto PC, but Microsoft's always going to have their Xbox games on PC, which prior to this acquisition, no offense to Xbox or anything like that, but it just sort of seemed like, why would you continue to get an Xbox if you had a PC already? Because you could realistically play both on that, and it's just like you're missing out on the PlayStation. So I think this is a good acquisition for them, and I think it'll definitely help them, because otherwise I think it's just going to be a repeat of last generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of follow up on that, they haven't confirmed that Bethesda games will be exclusive. However, they almost certainly will be either exclusive for a period on Xbox, or, for example, smaller Bethesda games like the Rage series, or even something like Doom or whatever, may become exclusive while bigger titles may be available elsewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it'll be the timed exclusive sort of deal.
Yeah, okay, I see. And I guess this exclusive sort of also plays into the console PC war, because console people are always saying, well, you don't have this game on PC, and PC games are always saying, well, you don't have all our indie games on console. So yeah, I guess it's sort of the same dynamic.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and I also want to talk a bit more about the game subscription model that consoles are pushing. For example, Xbox Live, or I forgot what PlayStation called it, but are they also a way for the company to win the console war? Or, because I see a lot of people being attracted to the new Xbox because they say Xbox Live is just so much better than the PlayStation model. So
yeah, Xbox Game Pass is pretty huge for Xbox, and I don't think there is much of a console war in the eyes of actually Sony and Microsoft anymore. I think the console wars and all that are kind of over, and they're more in the eyes of fans and, people arguing what console's better. But I think Game Pass is a huge step forward for Xbox and just gaming in general. I think PlayStation needs to do something. They're working on the PlayStation Play at Home initiative, I think it's called, and a lot of those games are coming out for free with their PS Plus subscription. I think that is a good way to combat the Games Pass. But I think Games Pass is it's an amazing thing, but it's also available on PC as well. So you can actually get a lot of their games so for free. Well, paid as a subscription, but essentially free, because I think you can pay 3 months for $1, something like that. So it's pretty close to nothing. And you can get a lot of if they do go down the road of what we were touching on just before and making Bethesda games, exclusive, you could basically get all these brand new Bethesda games coming out day one for essentially $1, as opposed to, 50 or 60 quid or $125 Australian.
I think as well, a lot of people tend to forget that PlayStation actually have PlayStation Now, which is their equivalent of Game Pass, which is, where you pay a monthly subscription fee and you get access to various different games or whatever. But I think the key difference, as Jayden was kind of mentioning, is that with Xbox Game Pass, you get these brand new games that are like, just coming out that you can access for $1 or £1 or whatever. But with PlayStation Now, they have newish games on there, but they're slowly added like well after they've come out. There's nothing that is like exclusive to PlayStation Now. There's nothing that it's brand new and it's coming for PlayStation Now. It's like, for example, they've only just added Marvel's Avengers. They added Days Gone, I think, a few months ago. It's a subscription service basically for people who want to catch up on PlayStation games that they've missed out on, as opposed to playing the next PlayStation game. I think if PlayStation want to kind of capture that market, they need to take the TV model, the Netflix, the Amazon, the Hulu model, and maybe even do PlayStation Now exclusives, like small indie games that you can only play on there, or release not Horizon Zero Dawn, but it's the only one I can think of. Release a fairly big-ish game for the PlayStation Now platform. Like, make it something that people have to go to if they want to access these games. But right now, it's basically just a backlog accumulator. It's just a way of playing a kind of a decent backlog of PlayStation games, but one that I think a lot of people have probably already played the games on there, so it doesn't seem as viable as Game Pass.
It's also not available everywhere. Like PlayStation Now is not. No, it's not available in Australia.
Oh, well, that doesn't help.
Yeah.
I can imagine that being a problem.
Yeah, can't even play it. Yeah, it's got limited countries on PlayStation Now, so it's a bit strange. They must have run into some issues or something with the rollout. I don't know. We also have pretty average internet down here, so.
Yeah, well, one thing that they're trying to push with PlayStation Now is the ability to download games as opposed to stream them, which is what they were doing originally. So if you live in Australia, like Jayden, streaming games probably not the best idea because Australian internet is notoriously not good. But with Game Pass, I'm pretty sure you can download the games, at least on PC. You can just download the game, so you don't need to worry about streaming. If you don't have a great internet connection, you can play these games offline. So I think, again, it's another huge bonus. As much as I prefer PlayStation, I think Xbox Game Pass is leagues ahead of PlayStation Now and even PlayStation Plus. And I think if PlayStation want to kind of capitalize on the streaming kind of, not streaming, the subscription model kind of boom that's going on at the moment, they should probably improve PlayStation Now and maybe bring it to Australia. That would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. So I can definitely sympathize with Mr. Hellyar's bad internet. Canada's also not so great with the internet. And yeah. And before we finish off to some more fun type questions, I want to talk a bit about the Chinese video game market and its influence on the West video game market. For example, Genshin Impact, and before that, I think was Honkai Impact. Those games did really well here, and also the fact that Diablo, I think it's also being made in China, made by a Chinese developer and published on the mobile platform. So what is the Chinese market influence on the global gaming industry?
I think you've got companies like, I might be wrong on this, Tencent, which I believe are Chinese.
Yes,
is that right?
Yeah.
So they own big portions of Epic, I think.
40%, I think it is.
Yeah, I think you are getting a lot of kind of the Chinese video game market kind of influencing a lot of Western video game kind of production. And stuff like Genshin Impact and Honkai Impact, which are both by Miho, or I think is that, I think that's the right
don't
name.
worry,
I'm
I
not
can't
sure.
even pronounce it.
These games are huge, and I think a big part of that, especially with Honkai Impact, was the fact that it was mobile, and it was kind of a big kind of flashy game for mobile. But also, I think Western audiences are maybe becoming more receptive to kind of Chinese and Japanese video games a lot more than I think they were even kind of 5 or 10 years ago. You're seeing games like for example, Persona 5, which I know is Japanese, but that is becoming kind of increasingly more popular and getting huge kind of Western audiences interest. So I think there's definitely a growing marketplace for Chinese video game kind of influence to come in. I mean, there was that game on Steam recently that I think it's a game that's entirely in Chinese that just blew up. It got like loads of reviews, loads of people were buying it in the West. I can't remember the name, but yeah, it saw huge success. And as a result, we've actually seen more and more Chinese games being added onto Steam as a result, because I think there's kind of now more of an audience than maybe there ever was before.
Okay, I see. I definitely see that, because I think my friend was actually playing that the game you mentioned, but I also can't remember its name. So yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. And now we can move on to the more fun questions, I guess. So yeah, to any one of you, so what is the first anime or game that made you click, let's say, and those are from the students, by the way, and say that's what I like and that's what I want to pursue?
Oh, that's a good one. The first anime or game. I feel like the first anime that made me really go, oh man, this is good. I watched a lot of Full Metal Alchemist when I was younger.
Oh, really?
The
Okay.
original Full Metal Alchemist. I haven't seen Brotherhood.
Not the good one.
The good one, in my opinion. I haven't seen Brotherhood. For me, I'm an original purist. But that, my brother's friend kind of ripped it on a DVD for us to watch, and it was something that like we weren't really exposed to when we were kind of that age. That was huge for me, and I remember kind of super getting into that. And obviously, Studio Ghibli as well was kind of a huge part of my life growing up, and I think was one of the kind of the main kind of anime influences that then sort of got me interested in kind of talking about it and writing about it and whatever. But in terms of video games, I don't know. I can't think of. Maybe the original Halo. I played a lot of the original Halo when I was younger. Probably shouldn't have, but I played a lot of the original Halo. And stuff like Animal Crossing and Pokemon and kind of the early Mario games definitely were kind of some of my first exposure to it, and kind of what got me interested in video games as kind of a medium.
Yeah, I think one of my first anime and games sort of thing ties back to Nintendo 64, because that was my first console, and I played a lot of Pokemon. So I think Pokemon Stadium, Pokemon Snap, a lot of them influenced, especially because it was one of my first animes I loved as a kid as well. So like Pokemon was definitely one of the things that's always influenced. I'm sure that's influenced a lot of people in like this generation as well. It's been a pretty massive franchise for a long time. But yeah, that was basically one of the first things that was like, yeah, I love Pokemon, simple as.
Yeah, I see. Because I do remember even in my childhood, Pokemon was always playing like on TV, even in China. So definitely Pokemon. And yeah, so my next question is actually regarding a game that's oh, by the way, I think we're going to get a lot of comments on the fact that Mr. Wilson doesn't like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
I haven't seen it. I will watch it eventually, but it's an entirely nostalgia-based thing. It's something I watched as a kid. I know that Brotherhood is supposed to be better, and I'm sure it is. and I will get around to it. But right now, I'm just enjoying the.
I hope you get taken out of context. The part where you said, "Oh, I don't like it." I'm curious.
Oh, we can put that in the intro if you guys like.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I do hope we don't get too much hate on that. And next question is actually regarding your opinion on Five Nights at Freddy's. So, what do you guys think about Five Nights at Freddy's?
I've only played the first one because I don't deal well with horror games. But I think Five Nights at Freddy's is kind of this incredible, story about kind of an indie developer kind of rising up and kind of becoming super successful, and is definitely one of the kind of my kind of first memories of an indie game being picked up by YouTubers and then as a result becoming like this huge successful franchise. I think it's super interesting. The guy who made it, if I remember correctly, he was like making kind of Christian-based video games prior to making Five Nights at Freddy's, and then I think was kind of criticized that his characters looked a little kind of creepy, and kind of took that and ran with it and made Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that's the story. I might be wrong on that. I do apologize if I am. But Five Nights at Freddy's is a super creative game. It's super interesting, very, very scary, but a lot of fun, especially late at night with the lights off. I still think the first one holds up today as being quite a terrifying game.
Yeah, Mr. Hyler?
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't actually really checked out Five Nights at Freddy's that much. I'm more of a. I don't play a lot of horror games, and that's not on the fact that I get scared of them. It's actually on the fact that I don't actually get scared of them that much.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Big man, Jayden.
No, we'll get there. But I think I don't get scared of them because I played horror in VR, and then after playing it in virtual reality, I don't think anything's as scary as that. So I can't go. Anything else just doesn't quite feel as like real. I feel a little bit disconnected in comparison. So, but I definitely will be checking the newest one because that's coming to VR. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. So that one's going to be pretty scary, I think.
I don't think I personally would be able to handle any horror games in VR. That just seems, that's a bit too much.
It's an interesting experience. You won't be scared of anything else.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess next question. What do you think about Twitch and live streaming?
It's amazing. It's one of the greatest things to happen on the internet. I feel like it's such an incredible way of kind of communicating with your like communities and kind of building kind of, I don't know, kind of you feel closer with the people that you're kind of talking to. I know personally I've had some great experiences watching other people on Twitch and kind of bonding and having a good time there. We know a few people ourselves that are like Twitch streamers and stuff. I think it's just great. I think it's really fun. There's loads of really cool different kind of like types of content on Twitch. Basically got something for everyone. Yeah, it's great. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I like Twitch as well. I've never actually like done a live stream myself or streamed on Twitch, but I definitely completely agree with what Tom's saying. It's a really good place to engage and whatnot. So I think one day the game creator will probably do something along those lines, but for now,
absolutely.
Yeah, like if you guys do that, I look forward to it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Next question: have you watched the anime Demon Slayer, and what do you think?
I have not. Have you?
Of course, man. I'm cultured.
Sorry. I did hear about the latest movie. Kind of beat Spirited Away is the highest.
Oh really?
Grossing
oh my
anime
god!
movie, I think.
Yeah.
Which was super interesting.
I haven't seen the movie, and I wanted to actually watch it like as soon as possible, but I just haven't had the opportunity. I love the anime, and I know the manga is incredibly successful as well. But yeah, I think it's an awesome anime. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil anything. Yeah, so I don't really know what to say without spoilers. But it's awesome, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend going and checking out. It's basically like an amalgamation of like heaps of different like the best parts of heaps of different animes,
Yeah, I think
all in one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think we will also get a lot of hate for Mr. Wilson not watching the show.
No, it's
okay.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I feel like my opinion on anime will never be respected ever again.
Yeah.
Don't worry, he won't be covering any anime on the game credit.
Oh no. I was going to. I had plans.
Well, anyway, besides anime and Mr. Wilson not watching the shows that he's supposed to watch, actually, a more serious question from the students. How much are you concerned about politicization of entertainment journalism?
Oh, interesting question. This is a tough one. I feel like, oh man, where to even begin with this question without upsetting anyone? I feel like obviously everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I feel like as kind of an entertainment outlet or a publication or whatever, I feel like you're entitled to your own opinion about the things that you're covering. I feel like if you happen to cover something political, if you do an opinion piece on it, then fine. Obviously, put your own opinion because that's the opinion of the author. Opinion pieces are never representative of the publication. It's usually just of the author. And if you're doing news, then obviously be, unbiased and cover it objectively. I feel like the biggest issue is usually via Twitter. That's where most of the controversy kind of arrives. I feel like if you've got the platform to, speak out against injustice and kind of all the terrible things that are happening in the world, and you've got people who are going to listen. Personally, I think it's great if you use that platform for good. If you use that platform for hate and, just for not good things, then it's this is a difficult one to broach. Basically, speak out if you've got a good thing to say. Maybe don't say anything if you've got a bad thing to say. And I know obviously what's bad and good is subjective. I don't know. This is a difficult question.
I think I support the idea of it, but similar to what Tom's saying, I think there's a difference between stating your opinions in articles and journalism and being aggressive towards, you can state your opinion with supportive arguments and facts, and I think there's a difference between that and some articles that have been coming out recently and stuff like that, where it's more just seems more aggressive rather than an opinion. And I think that's where the concern lies. I think where you're getting aggressive about an opinion, you can't. I think every piece has to be you should, more of a debate. Like you should be able to see the other side but disagree, rather than I hate the other side and completely my way is right and that's the way to go. So I think there needs to go, and I think you need to be able to see both ways in opinion pieces, and that is just. Yeah, the way it is, and that is my opinion.
Okay, I see.
feel like that answer was way better than mine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very hard question to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some general questions, again, which I think will still piss people off if they're listening. PC or console?
Console. It's easier. You don't have to worry about your laptop not being able to run certain games. Yeah, I'd 100% console.
I'm pretty split, actually, but I think I'm going to go console. I think depends what console. I think I have a PS5. Yeah,
PlayStation's the right console.
So I have a PS5, so I'd say that over anything. But there was a period there where I did prefer my PC over my PS4, but I think that was on the basis of it being outdated. So I was more just going, I'm sick of my PS4 being laggy through the UI, whereas my PC is just fine. But now that I have a PS5, yeah, I've never looked back.
Okay. I see. Again, your opinion on the PS5 and the fact it's console over PC, it's still going to anger lots of people, but we'll get past that.
I do apologize for all my controversial opinions. Please forgive me.
And I guess for PC gaming, some student asked the question: Intel or AMD processors?
I think
Oh, dear.
I don't really have like a preference. I think at the end of the day, I sort of look at what's cheaper. I did, however, build my PC with AMD, so I don't know if that can be towards the AMD side. Generally, here in Australia, AMD is cheaper, and the only reason I don't get Intel is just basis on the fact that it's way more
Price.
expensive.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I guess Mr. Wilson, you just play on console, so there's no problem over here.
Yeah, I mainly play on console. I mean, I've got a laptop, and I just got whatever I was told was the best one. So I've no idea.
You probably have Intel. I can't believe it.
Yes, I have Intel Core i7 8th gen. Apparently, that's probably not very good. People are probably going to criticize me for my 8th gen Core i7.
I think it's only because it's like 2.2 gigahertz or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we got that email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for all my questions, and it was really fun talking to you too, and thank you for coming on. It has been
our pleasure.
Yeah, it has been a blast, honestly.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good fun.
Well, thank you again. Thank you guys for coming on to the show.